Hey, welcome to the Note Investor Podcast. I'm Dan Deppin, and today I'm joined by Marco Bario. Marco, how you doing?
I'm good, Dan. It's great to do this with you.
Yeah, appreciate you joining. So maybe start by giving folks like a little bit of background on you and kind of what you do in the space.
Yeah, I'm a note investor who had a prior career in the film and television industry in Los Angeles. So I've come a long way from a very different place to do what I do now, I guess.
What do you do in that industry? I'm curious.
I'd gone to school in Boston and studied television production, and then I moved to Los Angeles right after that. And I used to work on mostly four camera sitcoms, some TV movies, and a few other types of productions, but mostly that. I was in that world for a long time. I worked in the production office, pushed around schedules and budgets, and made sure the crew got fed and all the important
Yeah.
stuff like that. And then I switched over to our first child was due to be born, was in the oven, as they say,
Hmm.
and the freelance hours, and the life was pretty tough. So, as fate would have it, someone offered me a position at what ultimately became Technicolor, which is a big
Yeah.
international post-production company, and been in color film actually about 100 and some years ago.
Hmm.
So I was in that universe for a long time in post-production as we were switching over to a lot of digital services. It was a fun time to be part of that. And that kind of ran its course, we'll just say. And I was in that world for a number of years. But at that point, I got the bug. Um, I got the entrepreneur bug. I mean, when I in production, all we do is spend money. We don't make money. We don't have to make money. We just have to spend it.
Yeah.
There's a budget, but we just spend money. So in business, all of a sudden, I was introduced to the P&L statement and our cash flow and things like that. So some of that was fun, some of it wasn't so fun, but I like the challenge of trying to create a business around something and serve customers. Um, so as that ended, I wanted to do something ultimately for myself, and I wanted to do something that I could do from anywhere, um, and that ultimately led me to a real estate meetup down in Manhattan Beach in California. And every month at those meetings is a new topic, and every month that's what I was going to be. I was going to buy apartment buildings. I was going to flip houses. I was going to do short-term rentals.
Hmm.
You name it. Um, until one month, there was a panel of note investors, some hard money lenders, some buying non-performing seconds,
So
a
what time frame was
variety.
this?
So 2015-ish.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was right about I'm sure it didn't hurt that I thought I needed to pick a lane, or else I would never do anything. Which I certainly still sometimes am guilty of, chasing blinking objects.
Well, it's not a bad idea, right? Like you see a lot of people do that. They're always doing something different, but they never quite get really good at one thing.
I have a long list of those things, and it's funny. It's the advice I give my kids as they went into college. Like, oh, try different things on and see what fits. And as entrepreneurs and as up and coming investors, we need to try things on and see what fits. I mean, I've invested in some syndications and at least lent money on a couple of flips just to sort of be exposed to that world. And I've certainly tried a few things on, but I don't know, everything lined up. And at the very time I was telling myself I needed to choose something, there was this panel of people who I thought it just connected with me. Um, and it was, to give you a glimpse of my personality, and certainly in film and television production, there's a lot of this just figuring things out. We're going to put everybody on set, and we're going to have a plan, and we know that plan's going to change, but we know
Hmm.
we can figure it out, and we have the tools and the knowledge to do that. So that's what note investing really is. I mean, when I really think back on it, there were a bunch of people who'd go buy an asset if it was a non-performing note. That's where I started with
Hmm.
a plan, but it doesn't always go as planned. And that in that is not only the challenge and the adventure, but results in a lot of knowledge. So it's
Yeah,
really,
I mean, with these notes, like there's borrowers or human beings on the other side, right? So you can't, like I have sometimes investors ask me, well, how is this gonna go? Like, what are the numbers gonna be? And it's like, I give you my best estimates, but I can't tell you definitive. I can tell you what I think is most likely, but I can't tell you what's gonna happen.
yeah. And I know that we're told that investing, well, often we're told investing is supposed to be boring. Um, I don't think I'm one that likes boring. I like variety. I have a good idea of the outcome, and I protect myself certainly. And part of that's just by owning a number of assets, so that if one is in the bid and misfit notes that week, then that month, then the others are okay.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's have to have a little bit of appetite for adventure, I believe.
Yeah, it's definitely a numbers game, especially if you're doing the non-performing
Mhm.
type stuff. Yeah. So when you started in Host, did you jump like right into the non-performing, or like what did you do to actually get started
Well, the
buying?
first, yeah, the first note I bought was actually from the guy who ran those meetings in Manhattan Beach. He had a business in Memphis where he bought houses, renovated them, put renters in them, and sold them off to investors as a turnkey, rental investment.
Hmm.
Then he would stay on as a property manager back then. But he would sell them usually with a carryback, and then he would sell that note to an investor at par. And I thought, you know what? I know you're not really supposed to buy these at par, but I've never bought paper before, and I
Hmm.
should probably just try that. And 7% isn't a bad amount of money to earn while I actually pick up a new skill.
Yeah.
So it was the first I bought, the very first note I bought. But then from there, I dove right into non-performing second. So I went from the
Yeah.
big pool to the deep end very quickly.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that. So what was your experience with non-performing seconds? Because those seem like really the Wild West.
I think it's less Wild West than people who don't invest in them make it out to be. Um,
Hmm.
at that time, there was still a bit of inventory out there. That's not the case anymore, I don't believe. But that checked the box for me of wanting to get my hands dirty in order to learn. The people who've heard me talk before, I've used this analogy before, but I always imagine like Houdini, who would say, you're going to handcuff me and wrap me in chains and dunk me into this tank of water and lock the lid on the
Hmm.
tank, and I'm going to get out of it. And yes, we know he had a plan to get out, but I don't know, maybe more, or maybe once or twice it didn't go as he planned. So I wanted to try on different things in different situations, different states. It's in bankruptcy. It's been non-performing a long time. The first is performing, the first isn't performing. It's vacant, it's not vacant. Just to get all those experiences, again, with some risk protection, and I wasn't being completely careless, but I knew that I wasn't always certain of the outcome. But from
Hmm.
each one of those, because all these things are figure outable, one of my favorite words, but from each one of
Yeah.
those, um, I did have to pick up a lot of new skills out of necessity, and it made me a better investor.
Yeah, you can definitely learn by doing. Like I know in my experience, I did some training and whatnot, but there's nothing like actually completing the purchase of a note, like going through the whole process and then getting into unique situations. Because I know, especially in my first couple years, I kept running into weird scenarios I had never heard of before. I'm like, what is this? And then you talk to people like, oh yeah, I've seen that before. It's like, why didn't anybody tell me?
Because how could anybody sit you down and tell you everything?
Yeah, it's hard. There's a lot. And it's funny. I was talking to somebody last night that I'm mentoring, and he's like, wow, some of this stuff is a little bit overwhelming. And I said, well, the key is you've got to go through it yourself a few times. Like it looks crazy when I'm like filtering through a tape and looking at stuff, but I said, once you kind of know what you're looking for and you go through it, you can do this pretty quickly. So it's not quite as bad as it looks. So, but now, so are you still located in California?
I have, I don't know, sort of one toe in the water in California now. Life for me changed a bit, and I started dating a woman who I went to high school with, and I
Oh, nice.
grew up in Maryland, and Tracy is still in Maryland, and that's where I'm talking to you from right now. So I have a place here. I'm in Frederick, Maryland, a little bit north.
Uh-huh.
I grew up in Montgomery County, which is one county south of here, right outside of DC.
No,
And
very cool.
so I have an apartment. I sold my primary in Los Angeles, and I have an apartment there, but I'm about to give notice.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah,
So has most of your investing been out of state, or were you buying like in California and
yeah.
Maryland?
I've only ever owned one note in California. It's now life for me is a little different. I don't buy non-performing institutional paper. I buy seller carrybacks, and
Mm-hmm.
market in California. There's a limit set. I can only really do 5 transactions a year there without being licensed as a real estate broker. It's the only state that
Mm-hmm.
I know that has that requirement. So I just chose not to market there for that reason. I don't need that license. There are 49 other states. Thank you.
Yeah, what was interesting when I had Fred and Tracy Rui on a couple weeks ago, and they said actually like California was one of the top states for the number of seller finance notes getting generated. They were in the top like four, three, four, five, something like that, which just kind of surprised me.
It's probably number two.
Yeah.
Um, they certainly aren't abundant in Los Angeles County where I lived, but it's a big
Mm-hmm.
state. I mean, think of this, it is the top producer of farm goods in America. It's not all San Francisco, Los Angeles, you know what I mean? There's a lot more to it.
Yeah, that's a big state. Yeah, and if it was a country, it'd be what, like what is it, like the eighth
Fourth,
largest economy in the world or
no,
something?
it's like number four, fourth
Really?
largest, like bigger than Japan. I mean, we're talking against countries.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it's pretty gigantic.
yeah.
So what's your experience been with seller finance? Are you generating a lot of seller finance notes, or are you mostly marketing like to buy them?
No, I market to mom and pops directly.
Mm-hmm.
That was what in figuring out who I was, who I am, and what I really enjoyed. It wasn't the non-performing notes because I found that I just spent my time dealing with attorneys and loan servicers, and as nice as they are, um, it wasn't it wasn't very fulfilling for me. And and I'll be frank, I had a couple where the borrowers who were in default and didn't make good on their promises, I acknowledge that, were so backed into a corner, I felt I just saw the ugly side of people at a level I didn't care to anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That's me. Um, and believe me, in entertainment, I've been screamed at and called a lot of dirty words, and I've had enough of that in my life.
Yeah,
So
I can imagine. Yeah.
I have. So I've done my time. So I was drawn to talking to mom and pop sellers, and I mean real mom and pops, the ones who, if you went through the presentation with Fred and Tracy, you'll see that I think 85% of the notes created in 2023 were one-offs, meaning that
Mm-hmm.
originally created one. Those are my people. Those are my people. They've usually created one note in their whole life, and they've never sold a note because now they're talking to me about selling it. And they're brand new to the process and brand new to all of it. And they're just 95% of the time, and I'm not exaggerating, the nicest people who are so happy to talk to somebody who takes their time with them and is
Mm-hmm.
patient with them and is transparent and straight with them. Um, and sometimes it leads to a closed transaction, and sometimes not then or not ever. Sometimes eventually. It's a much different life, and I really enjoy that part.
So why are these mom and pops creating these notes? Like what's like if it's an industry they're not familiar with, like how did they come about doing that?
I don't know. Where do you live, Dan?
I'm in Colorado. I'm outside of Denver.
Outside of Denver? Would you
Hmm.
say that, I mean, how popular would you say seller financing is where you live?
Uh, I don't think it's very common
Yeah.
in Colorado. But our market is maybe a little bit unique. Our housing prices are very high. We kind of like, we have a tendency to trend behind California, like we're slowly trying to catch up. So there's a lot of I'd say higher dollar transactions. Now, Colorado also has a lot of rural areas as well. If you've ever driven across I-70 in the Eastern Plains, like most of the state is nothing. I'm not too familiar with what goes on out there, though. We might have more of it. But I think on Fred and Tracy's list, they were pretty far. Colorado was pretty far down the list in the
Yeah.
amount of transaction volume.
Yeah, I'm willing to bet they're more common in those rural areas. So there's urban areas, there's tertiary areas, and there's rural areas.
Hmm.
And the tertiary sliding into rural is the sweet spot for me as a buyer of seller finance notes, and that's where you start to find them. You certainly don't see them in Los Angeles County or in
Yeah.
Denver.
Hmm.
It's although I bought one in Denver, but they're not as common. It tends to happen more when the seller can't list a property on the MLS. The property itself doesn't, it's not really financeable for one reason or another. It could be
Hmm.
because it's in poor repair. It could be because it's mobile home and land and it's hard to find financing on those. Could be mixed use type properties. Um, and then there's a fair number who, the sellers wanted income.
Yeah.
And it's a nice income strategy, especially when interest rates, they've gone up a bit now, but when banks were paying 1% and less, um, and a seller could get 5% by carrying back, it was appealing.
Yeah.
Um, and then it's a tax planning strategy or tax reduction strategy because of the
Hmm.
IRS installment sale section, publication 537, the installment sale. There are a number of reasons people do it. I mean, you talked to Fred and Tracy, there were $28 billion in originations in 2023.
Yeah, it's a surprisingly large
Yeah.
amount. It's
I
a
can't
huge
tell you every
market.
story, but there are enough stories out there to keep me busy for sure.
Yeah. So how do you find these folks? Like are these people who are like proactively looking to sell the note, or are you kind of finding these people who just ended up with them in one way or another?
Certainly some people ended up with them because of inheritance. So that happens sometimes. Sometimes they're more of a reluctant seller financer. They just couldn't close on a transaction without carrying back, so they did, and they want to get rid of it right away. Uh,
Hmm.
but I let people find me. I'm one of the few people out there who does this, but I use paid advertising on online, so pay-per-click advertising.
Uh-huh.
I started doing direct mail, and that strategy works. Or a lot of my peers are very active direct mailers. But I found it just fit me a little better, and I had the patience and invested the capital to a lot of capital to get my campaigns to a place where they're profitable for me and generate consistent leads. Uh,
Hmm.
but almost all my traffic is incoming traffic.
That's cool. I've never done that myself. It seems like a business unto itself, like setting up the marketing machine.
I mean, I thought of it this way. There's there's one note person out there who charges many tens of thousands of dollars for a mentoring program. I thought,
Hmm.
I gotta tell you what, I'm gonna take that and I'm gonna spend it on learning how to generate clicks from paid advertising. So
Yeah.
to
Now,
give
did
you
you do
some,
that
give
yourself,
you
or
some
did you
idea
like,
what my investment was there.
yeah, did you do that yourself, or did you like hire an agency
I
to
started by
run?
doing it myself. One of the biggest challenges is if you're a plumber or a mover or
Hmm.
have a restaurant or something that Google understands and a third party marketing company can understand, it's viable just to walk into an agency or call an agency who does this kind of thing and pay them money and they can start to generate clicks. But you think about it, I buy mortgage notes. Okay, so one of the search terms might be mortgage notes. Google
Hmm.
algorithms aren't optimized for this little niche within a niche within a niche that I work in.
Yeah,
So the minute they see mortgage, they put up Quicken Loans and companies like that, and their ad budget's a lot more than mine. So
right.
it takes a long time to find ways to make those clicks relevant for me.
Yeah, because I'm part of an entrepreneur group, and there are some folks in there who run various types of agencies, and I've talked to some of them in the past about that, and I run into that where they get kind of confused because my business, it's not a cookie cutter thing that follows into an existing template. As you said, I'm not like a plumber or a real estate agent or something like that. I'm like, well, I do this, this, and that. And then they're like, ah, I don't know. I don't do that. Like,
Yeah. So anyway, I started by doing it myself, and I did that for a couple of years. And then once I got the campaigns to a certain place, I have a company who helps me to maintain just because I got busy.
yeah, there's only so much time in the day to do everything. So has that been your main play right now, is finding these seller finance notes, or have you been doing any of the other things that are popular, like subject to or creating wraps and things like that?
I haven't. So here in Frederick, it's a goal with Tracy, my girlfriend, and I to accumulate a portfolio of rental properties.
Mm-hmm.
And all things are on the table there. I'm fairly well educated when it comes to creative finance. First of all, being so immersed in the note space, I end up buying a lot of wraps because a lot of seller financing is involves wraps before wraps were ever talked about. It's been around a long time. And
Yeah.
so all that stuff's been around a long time. But so I'm fairly well versed on it. In fact, we'll talk about this later, but I'm teaching at a big creative finance summit coming up in a couple of weeks. So I sort of run with that crowd. But no, I don't have a time to do
Yeah.
everything I want to do, which I'm working on diligently. So no, there are opportunities that I just haven't been chasing because I'm busy with my day job, which is buying seller carrybacks.
Yeah. So maybe you can get into that seller finance or that creative finance conference now. I think you mentioned before we started recording, you're going to be in Columbus, I believe.
It's in Columbus, Ohio. It is, let's see. I guess if you want to count Thursday night, the 25th of April, where I'm sure we'll all be networking in the bar, that's the unofficial start. But it's the
Hmm.
26th, 27th, and 28th, with another kind of informal spillover into Monday, the 29th. It's in Columbus, Ohio. It's the Creative Finance Summit. Vina Jones Cox is producing it, puts this on, who's one of my favorite investors and teachers out there.
Hmm.
Um, it's me, it's Pete Fortunato, it's
Oh, cool.
Mario Giordano, it's who else? Courtney Fricky, Lindsay Jensen, a lot of people who, frankly, I've taken most of their classes. I just really
Yeah.
like it. So it's my people. The people I like to learn from are many of them. And they're all teaching at this. It's going to be great. So the
Very
Creative
cool.
Finance Summit, you find the info on Vina's website. She's Real Estate Goddess. So if you search for that, you'll find this.
Yeah, and I'll track down all those links and I'll put them in the description.
Okay.
So if people are listening to this, they can just go down and
So its registration will be about 400 people in person. It'll be a
Mhm.
good room to be in too, just to network. And it's frankly, I like being one of the only notes guys in a room like that. It's
Yeah.
fun. People want to talk to us because it's a little weird what we do, right?
Yeah,
But
it
also,
draws people's attention
yeah.
because they've never heard, because typically they've never heard of it.
Mhm.
And they're like, oh, that sounds interesting. Like I didn't know that was possible that you could do that.
Yeah. But also, when I was first talking to Vina about the event, I said, "Are you looking for sponsors?" She said, "Yes." And so I connected her with First National Acceptance Company. So they're going to be there as a sponsor and they're going to be presenting. So they'll be talking about buying seller carrybacks also.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, I had them on a workshop I ran a little bit earlier this year. Yeah, First National Acceptance is great because they, for people who aren't familiar with them, are they a bank technically? I'm not sure, but they're in,
Yeah, they're a
yeah,
division of First National Bank of America in Michigan.
yeah, they're located in Michigan and they buy a lot of notes and their criteria is fairly stringent. But if you have a note that meets their criteria, they'll generally pay top dollar for it. If you have a note that you're looking to
Yeah.
sell.
Yeah, so I have three under contract with them right now, where I don't use the term broker, I'm wholesaling to them.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really what I do because I don't represent either party. So I prefer wholesale. But anyway, so my business is I buy some for my own portfolio, whatever I can, whatever makes sense, but I don't
Mm-hmm.
buy them all. So I generate fee income by selling to people like Grand Bank or First National Acceptance or smaller and private investors as well.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, there's definitely a market for these things. Once you find them, there's no shortage of people looking to.
There's so many. Dan, just before our call, I got a lead on a note secured by a bowling alley in Nebraska. It's the
Oh, I've
craziest.
got a buddy that would be interested in that. He's a
Really?
big bowler. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, being a
Well, I
bowler.
don't know that if he wants to buy a note, but he would be interested in the bowling alley. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, the bowling alley's not for sale, just the note.
Huh, that's a different one. I've done residential notes in Nebraska, but yeah, I haven't. Have you wandered much into like commercial type notes on commercial type assets?
No, I get the call sometimes. I told you, I really like these nice mom and pop sellers. They tell me
Mm-hmm.
about their lives. I know about their hobbies. I know about their children. It's the life I like to. It's like hanging out with them at the bridge club sometimes. It's such a odd little world, but amazing little world that I live in. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
the commercial sellers, it's just a different vibe, and I may not be the person for them. I'll be,
Right.
so my marketing really focused leads me more towards the people I like to attract, and um, you'll get it if you go to my website a little bit. It just doesn't say I want to buy your big commercial asset. It says I want to talk to nice people about your nice little note.
Yeah, I'll add the links to that as well in the
Okay.
show notes. So, but cool. That's probably a pretty good spot to call it for now. So, Marco, thanks again for joining. Really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure.
All right. Well, thanks. See you guys next time. All right.